morning to everyone. Trust everybody is doing well and keeping safe. We started COVID Jaankari with sole intention of providing validated information, resources, and on-ground support to those in distress during the pandemic. Our state-wise communities have more than 50,000 people assisting one another, backed by 250 digital volunteers to manage them effectively. To better organize these volumes, we are building a tech-led, crowdsourced matching platform to brace up for the future waves of COVID and beyond. We've also tied up with pool of doctors across India to provide teleconsultation to our communities to ensure they get timely help and avoid any kind of self-medication. While our objective is to improve accessibility for everyone, we are also looking to subsidize the consultation fee for people in need. Apart from this, we have also tied up with Zomato's Feeding India initiative to serve food to street dwellers and animals during lockdown across cities in India to support them. I'm Swati, founder of Exemius Health, and today I welcome you to the next edition of our flagship Health Jaankari series. Today we have Shashank, who is a senior resident fellow at Vidhi Center for Legal Policy and a volunteer for Nyaya, to throw light on several legal challenges and hassles faced by Indians owing to the pandemic. A very warm welcome, Shashank. We are so glad to have you today. Let's talk health.
Thank you.
Over to Apurva and Sumiran.
Hi. First, before we start with the session, Swati introduced that Shashank also works with Nyaya. So I will just like to share that helpline number. Can I do that? Just a second. I'll share my screen.
Please.
So if you have any questions regarding the vaccine registration, fines, bills, or any other legal issues during the pandemic, we have this helpline. You can just WhatsApp your query here. Ask Nyaya COVID Legal Helpline. This is the Twitter feed that I was showing. And this is the website. It is also multilingual, so any language, regional language, you can ask your question in. And we are like so happy. Like I was so happy to have received, a message about this in the morning. And this is a great initiative. We all need it really right now. Thank you so much. I'll just stop sharing my screen and we'll start with the questions. So the first question that I think every one of us has is, how has the pandemic been for you? Like you are dealing with legal issues, and you would have obviously come across a lot of fraud and scams that have been going. So how does one deal with COVID-related news via legal means? That is our first question.
COVID-related news. So firstly, I'm sure, thank you for having me here, and thank you to Nyaya. And I must also add that that not only is it bilingual and that the multilingual, the Nyaya portal, that all of the information and the responses to your questions are free. So you have to feel free to use the platform as much and get answers to all your questions. And like Apurva mentioned, we also have a online platform where you can submit your questions and get experts, and we have about 170 lawyers across different expertise to give you answers to. So the pandemic has been tough for everyone, and there have been several challenges. When you mean COVID news, I believe you're referring to fake news or untrue news, right? So,
yep.
So while that's a concern, if you look at the way the rumors around vaccinations or testing, or maybe the implications of vaccination, and generally on issues of caste, hatred, it's seen an unprecedented rise over the past couple of months, over the past year. So while firstly, before I get into the law and so what responses that we have to address such concerns, it's very prudent for anyone who sees a news and feels suspicious about its content, about its genuineness and its veracity, to go check if it's a legitimate piece of information. And there are several tools available on the internet today for you to check. For instance, the government themselves have a Press Information Bureau, the PIB. They have their own fact check mechanism where they proactively look at news that is moving around social media circles and then identify as to which is which is, in their opinion, fake or which is untrue. Apart from that, there are several private initiatives as well, alt news, and many other online initiatives where you could simply put yourself out there and check if something that is of interest to you, but you're not too sure if it's true or not. Now, on the legal question, should you be tomorrow affected by fake news, or should you be immediately impacted by something which is untrue and you believe that to be true and take actions in that? There are some legal mechanisms that can help you. For instance, our penal code or our criminal law has for a long time identified rumors and false information as to be a criminal offense. So you could, of course, go there and invite and file a complaint saying something was untrue and I believed it to be true and took certain actions. Or if there is a particular piece of information which is causing, like we say in legal language, widespread unrest or affecting peace of a particular locality, that is also a punishable offense under law. While criminal punishments on such issues of, say, fake news, misinformation, is of course difficult to prove and there are a lot of steps to it, there are some things that we can also do apart from criminal law. So we have the Disaster Management Act, the act that the central government invoked back in the first wave to manage lockdown, to make sure all states have a way of dealing with the pandemic. As you might see now, each state now has a different way of dealing with the pandemic. Back then, during the first wave, all the states had a uniform way of dealing with the pandemic. So back then, the government had invoked the Disaster Management Act. And there are some provisions there as well for you to deal with these concerns. But before we deal with these concerns, I think it's very, very much required that if anyone in our audience and friends and family believe that there is something that you believe is untrue and is sort of dominating in your WhatsApp groups and other social media circles, it's best to check on some of these sites and also just do a simple Google search. And should that be untrue, take your decisions accordingly. Yeah,
oh, right. Sorry, I was on mute. It's okay. So indeed, we have seen in these times, like even my WhatsApp phone keeps buzzing with information and we don't know how to check the real information from the fake. So apart from that, we also come across scams and fraudsters, giving out vaccines or cylinders. So how can we report that? Is there a mechanism?
So see, currently vaccines and I'm sure, I mean, many of you might have faced this concern with not only with oxygen cylinders, with critical COVID medicine, right? Could be Fabiflu, could be Remdesivir, and other critical medicines. Now, while these are, as we will categorize it under law, we call these such medicines and such medical requirements as essential commodities. So if they're essential commodities, they are under the state regulation. So what often the government does, it senses that there are certain commodities that is essential for us, essential for medical needs, essential for livelihood, and various other needs. And then it begins to regulate that. So many of the COVID medicines that we have today or required today are qualified as under essential needs. So essential commodities. So if someone were to hold illegally or someone were to buy large amounts of certain medicines or certain oxygen cylinders or whatever that might be that qualifies as essential and keeps it for private use or sells it at higher rate, it's definitely a punishable offense. But then the way this can be addressed depends on state to state. For instance, as far as my research goes, thanks to Nyaya, we've been told that Haryana has a different mechanism, Maharashtra has a different mechanism, and they have a helpline number. So, for instance, I might be happy to share that Haryana has a helpline number 708-708-9947. Uttarakhand has a similar helpline number, and you can complain on these helpline numbers, and these helpline numbers are easily findable on the internet. And then once you bring this to the notice of the concerned person, I'm sure some action will be taken. But should you find these helpline numbers hard to find, the police, of course, have some sort of extraordinary powers to deal with the situation for the moment or at the face of it. So it should be prudent that if you come across some scam or some instance where you are charged exorbitantly for a particular commodity, best for you to involve the local police station immediately, or the local health officers, or whoever, any government representative that you have access to, and they, I'm sure, will they be able to help. So I think that would be an appropriate way of dealing with this.
Okay. So we have already been through the second wave, and people say that we can expect a third wave, and maybe also some lockdown afterwards. So if I go out during lockdown, will I be fined or arrested? Is a question that we have.
See, I mean, of course, it's outside the law. If there is a lockdown, it is expected for you to be at home. Right? I mean, that's the purpose of the lockdown. And if you don't comply with the lockdown, I'm sure there are some consequences of it. But legally, the lockdown is imposed under a certain law. Like I mentioned earlier, the lockdown under the first wave was imposed under the Disaster Management Act. The lockdown now is by means of a curfew, by means of some way of controlling large amounts of crowd. Now, if you were to step out and the purpose of you stepping out does not fall under any of the exemptions, right? If you're not going for testing, or if you're not going to get yourself vaccinated, or if there is any purpose which is not listed as exempted by the government, you are definitely in the wrong. And you are liable for some sort of criminal action. So what could happen? There could be a case booked under you, your vehicles might be seized, and you might be asked to come to court on a later date and show to the court on why was it required for you to come out. So these are the potential proceedings that might ensue should you step out in a lockdown when you're not required to. And we've seen these instances. And so it would be best advisable that you see if your purpose of stepping down falls under any of the exemption list. Should it not, see if it's necessary, and ideally you shouldn't, and then maybe see what is required of you to take your next steps.
Thank you so much. The next question is, like we were talking about going out from our home. So we have this procedure of filing a e-pass. If we give out certain wrong information, or say we are going for something else, but we state something else, does it have any consequences?
This is a tricky question. If I were to deliberately put in wrong details, right? For instance, let's assume as of now, inter-district travel, there isn't any specific curbs. You could register on a particular platform and move around, and the platform requires very basic details. But for instance, if there were questions of, say, have you contracted COVID in the past, or have you got yourself vaccinated, and you fear that you might be rejected for a pass if you answer yes for yes, I've got COVID, no, I've not got vaccination. If you fear that and you give wrong information, that would ideally be, of course, an offense. You're being dishonest in the process. So that would, while for e-pass specifically, there seems, it works on a trust mechanism, right? It's very difficult for governments and authorities and police to identify if everybody who's crossing the border has actually genuinely given information. So there is a positive obligation on you to give out the actual truth to the authorities so that they're able to manage a pandemic of this sort. But should you not, and if the government realizes that you have wrongly given the information, you are definitely, action against you can be initiated, not only under the criminal law, but under disaster management and various other legislations where you have the threat of imprisonment always lingering. But however, there is always a caveat to this, that if you were to mistakenly put in a wrong details, right? For instance, you put in your wrong car number, or if you were to put the wrong address, out of a simple, genuine human error, those are always solvable, and it is best suggested that if you were to meet the authorities at the border, or if you meet the police at the border, it's best to communicate to them that, see, this is my genuine application, and this is the wrong details that I put in, and it was a genuine error, and I'm sure it can be understood. or you file for a fresh pass.
Thank you. The take here is that be honest in whatever we are feeling, right?
Correct. That's the
It's
answer to all.
as much as a responsibility of the citizens as of the government.
Correct.
Because we should not go through a third wave because it has been disastrous for all of us.
Correct.
So one of the things was like a lot of people have been admitted in hospitals, and can hospitals refuse to admit patients on the account of financial constraints, like if they cannot afford?
The immediate answer is no. The hospital cannot at any point of time deny admission or deny exit or check out of the hospital or of the dead body or any sort of post medical related consequences on the basis of financial lack of payment. So the law is very clear on it. But of course, while the law may be clear on this, you will still see hospitals engaging in such behavior because there is limited awareness, and many citizens, unfortunately, when they are in such difficult, hostile times, may not be able to argue with the hospital saying, our law is, this is our right, or this is what the law says. So for all of them who sort of, hopefully you will never face such situation, and should you do, always remember that your discharge or your relieving a death body from the hospital, you're entitled to do it without payment of fees of whatever that might be. But if you were to get into some trouble, feel free to engage with the local police or local officers who should be able to help you with. Second is, there are a lot of helpline numbers that are available, and these helpline numbers should be able to get you through this situation. So while the situation might be anxious and worrying to you, don't end up giving up your rights. You're allowed to receive the body without clearing the payments and making sure that you complete the funeral proceedings immediately.
Thank you for answering it. Also, the one question that I have gotten a lot was, a lot of people have been orphaned, like little kids have lost their both of their parents. So is there a way that the government is tracking these orphan kids, or how do we know these people are going through like have gotten a foster care or something?
So of course, this is a very unfortunate outcome of the COVID, that we've had many orphan children, and it's often spoken and understood in the law that the children up till a certain age are actually the responsibility of the state. So the state and the government have a larger responsibility towards the children, as much possibly as it is for the parents. So it's an equal responsibility. So thanks to Nyaya's research, I was able to identify that there is something called the Bal Swaraj, the COVID care link, which the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights is set up, where they are keeping a track of children, the impact the COVID has on children, on their education, on their well-being, on their other concerns that children might have during these times. So the child is keeping, the government is keeping a track of how many it is. I believe several state governments also have announced several reliefs for orphan children who have lost parents because of the COVID. And assistance is varied. The Prime Minister himself has, I believe, announced that all children who have lost their parents because of the COVID will be given financial support till the age of 18, and their education also will be state sponsored. So there seems to be a lot of announcements on this subject, while specific ways and methods of applying for these benefits are still must be work in progress. But I believe that this is a sensitive issue and the state is acting, and we should hopefully see some developments on this in the course of the next few weeks or months, and the children will hopefully get some protection out of this.
The other question is also related to this. If someone wants to adopt a child, is there a legal process?
So the COVID-19 process, the adoption process, I don't think has changed because of the COVID-19. There is, of course, a law that we have. There is an agency that you have to approach, and you have to make an application. The parents together, or a single child, or a single mother, or a single father, I believe, also is allowed to do. So you can approach an agency, and the process, I believe, remains the same. There is no change because of the COVID-19. The earlier process of going through an agency, filing your papers, maybe making certain caution deposits, and all of that remains. There is no specific change the adoption process has undergone because of COVID.
So, what is the process for relating to the last rites during the pandemic? So,
Actually, yeah. So that's actually an important question because the nature of the pandemic makes it very difficult for close family members and relatives to access a body which is succumbed to COVID. So that makes it difficult. So there is, and then often the hospitals themselves or the government themselves through the municipalities have a basic funeral procedure to dispose of the body. But however, there are two ways of looking at it. One is the access to the body and making sure that the families are part of the funeral proceedings. Now, if you look at the various lockdown orders, or if you look at the various COVID management related orders, there is an exemption that has been carved out for funerals. So up to 5 people or up to 10 people are allowed, and you are allowed to maybe use your personal transport or conduct last rites for this purpose. Additionally, certain states, I believe Tamil Nadu has done it, and certain insurance agencies also are giving something called a funeral expenses. So if you were to incur some expenses for the funeral, up to 15,000 or up to whatever, those may be those can be reimbursed by the government or the insurance agencies. So so all of this leads to one answer, that funeral rights is a legitimate right of a citizen and its close family. So a respectful death, as we call it, is an entitlement for everybody. So every citizen through his or her family member can claim legitimate access to funeral rights.
but then this brings us to a question that can hospitals confine a patient or stop the family from accessing the body over the deceased over unpaid bills, because
Correct.
that has happened to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think I touched upon this in the previous point as well. So once again, the state or the family members, or sorry, the state or the hospital cannot deny you access to the body, or cannot refuse to discharge the patient, the deceased patient, if on the grounds of non-payment of bills. It's of course a right, but while this remains a right, it's a difficult implementable right, because during such times where you're asking for the release of the body, the family members are also in grief, and it's difficult to argue and say, this is my right and I expect the body. So therefore, please know, for those of you here, please know that it is your right to receive the body, even in the absence of full payment of hospital fees. You can of course clear it later. But should you face some problems, please advisable that you get in touch with local police, get in touch with the local health officers to ensure timely release of the body, so that the hospital does not cause any problems to you. Because it is your right to get access to the body without payment of the fees.
What are the formalities for getting a death certificate in India during COVID? Has anything changed?
I believe, so some of these have remained the same, the death certificate. For instance, you can be the relative of the deceased, you can be the family members of the deceased, close family members, to approach the municipality. And each municipality will have a birth and death section.
Just a second, Shashank. Your voice broke midway. Can you?
Am I better audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you are the close relative of the deceased, or if you are a close a family member of the deceased, you can apply for a death certificate. The process remains the same as it was prior to COVID. Each municipality, panchayat, or local authorities around you have a section called the birth and death section. So you need to file a particular set of documents. This could be some hospital documents, and you have to get an affidavit. An affidavit is a legal paper where you get stamped by a notary saying the person so and so died on this date and this time at this location, and these may be submitted to the municipality, and the municipality will process it. They will ask you for a certain nominal fees. You pay the fees, and a certificate will be generated. But for several municipalities, maybe many cities which have corporations or which have bigger and a more well-organized municipalities, they have converted this process to online. For example, Bangalore, there is a mechanism to file these online. Delhi, I believe, also has a mechanism. So you can use that and avoid a visit to the municipality. Do so. I understand the need for a death certificate, especially during these times, to get insurance claims, to get all your some financial benefits. So each municipality have their own procedure. So they can't. I'm not able to tell you a general procedure, but the concerned authority is the municipality, and the birth and death section is often there in every municipality. So if you should go there and get yourself access to it.
Thank you, Shank. That was it from my side. The rest of the questions I'll ask my partner Surin. It was very insightful. Thank you.
Thanks, Atreya.
Also, can I make a request? Like, if you have these helpline numbers that you talked about earlier handy, could you
Sure.
share it with us so that we can share it with the audience?
Of course, of course.
Okay, thank you.
I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Hi, Shashank. Samvara here.
Hi, Smriti.
So yeah, I'll get on with the questions. So next question is, how can someone complain against domestic violence during the lockdown?
Yes, this is a very important question and something that we've seen a lot during these times. Unfortunately, though, so I will just put together the number right here so that the audience here are aware of it. That first and foremost, it's an offense. Domestic violence is a qualified and a serious offense under law, and we cannot. And this is punishable under law, and the law takes this very seriously, and the courts take it very seriously. So any such concern, you should be able to receive help instantly, and there are various ways of doing it. There's a helpline number, a WhatsApp helpline number, which once again, thanks to Nyaya, I was able to know, which is 0721 7735372. I will repeat 0721 7735372, which is a WhatsApp number, but also maybe reached over call. And this will help you file an immediate complaint, and action will be taken. The commission will coordinate with the local police or the local authorities to ensure that you get immediate protection for any such concerns that you might raise. Apart from that, there are certain all India helpline numbers for women in distress. There's a specific number 1091, which you might also want to access to. There is a women helpline for domestic abuse once over and above the WhatsApp landline, which is 181. And of course, you can, if none of these work, you can call the police on 100, and that should help you get your complaint across. And once again, during these times, it'd be very handy if you, for many of you citizens and audience here, that you keep handy some numbers of your local police, local officers, local authorities numbers, just because it's to be on the safer side, be well prepared during these times. It's good to keep some numbers handy, because God forbid some, not only domestic abuse, but beyond that, if there were some concerns you'd like to highlight, you have some numbers ready with you. So that would be a good way to be prepared for the various challenges the pandemic might throw.
Yeah, thank you. The next question is, what can be done for a pet animal whose owners have passed away due to COVID?
Yeah. So this is once again another concern. There is, unfortunately, there is no one single initiative that exists. There is no government initiative that is currently in force for animals who've been orphaned or animals who've lost uh, their uh, their loved ones or their owners. So I believe there are some private initiatives which is available on social media handles which we can access to, but unfortunately there is nothing that the government has done as of today for the animals. For specifically on this, there are some state governments have announced some basic grant, and but there is no formal process yet for something like this to happen. Unfortunately, this has not been given the kind of priority it should be, and we should, as citizens and as concerned individuals, get together to raise this concern and get some support, because this has not got the attention that it is ought to have got.
We aim to do the same to this platform. So the next question is, what measures has the government taken to protect mental health during the COVID-19 lockdown?
Yeah, so of course, many of us have had a very difficult last couple of months, or I'm sure for many of you, a last year or so, a little over a year. So the COVID, apart from health, has taken a sharp toll on mental health as well. There is of course a national helpline number, which I'm happy to repeat here, which is 080, or which I think that's for Karnataka, but I'm sure it's available for other states as well. Which for Karnataka it is 0804611 0007, 0804611 and you could also call the national COVID helpline number, which is I think 1921 or something like that. So where they will connect you with mental health counselors or psychologists, whatever required to help you get through this phase. It's very important, and I'm happy that the government has recognized this to be a serious concern. And there are some measures taken both at the state level and the national level to get you access to mental health professionals or psychologists who are trained in dealing with such issues. So there is support, and you should use it should it be necessary for you.
Okay, thanks. So the next question is, what is the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan package, which is the insurance scheme for health workers? And
Yeah. So this is the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan package is of course an insurance scheme which allows the those who have been in the front line, or those who have lost their work while doing COVID-19 work. It could be frontline, it could be doctors, it could be those working with the municipal authorities to picking up waste, or it could be anybody who's out there every day making our life a little safer. So for them, the government has given an insurance cover of 50,000, which would mean that should you lose life, or your family will be insured up to 50,000, and you will get your death is insured up to 50,000, and you will also be given some medical benefits in the process. I believe there is a form that you need to fill for this, and this form will allow you to get the access. See, such schemes, for those of you who might have questions, is how do I enroll into such schemes? These schemes which are made by the government, there is no particular procedure to specifically involve register for these schemes. Automatically, if you are a healthcare worker or if you're a frontline worker, you will become eligible for this, and you will get access to the benefits of this scheme.
Thank you. So my mother is also doing it as a frontline worker. So
Okay.
thankfully, like, we are all fine to it. So the next question is, like, can domestic help be legally called during the COVID-19 lockdown?
I believe you are referring to house help and those.
Yeah, maids, house help, and
Correct.
domestic help.
So for instance, it's actually very difficult legally to classify domestic help, because they're not a formal sector. They don't, unlike possibly the IT professionals or architects or advocates who have who are a category by itself or a formal sector. The domestic help, unfortunately, is an informal sector. So for them to be called, they don't have a specific the lockdown guidelines, or the government has not made any specific provision for them to come. So they can come to anybody's house, or they can work in anybody's house should the lockdown guidelines open up. If, for instance, if the lockdown allows you for people to travel between 6 and 10, then the domestic help or house help, they can come and work between those times and help the family or help any household. So that is possible, but there is no specifically any provision to allow them, maybe give them access to moving around the city, moving around an area because they have to do domestic work. So there is no such provision yet. But if the lockdown allows the household, the members of the household to move, the same laws and the same provision will apply to the domestic help as well. So there is no specific distinction that has been made. So if you can move around, so can your house help, so can your domestic help, and they can come to your house to help you.
Okay. So the next question is, how can I get an abortion during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, once again, there are no changes to this. There are no changes to this. The law remains the same. The pandemic has not changed any laws with respect to abortion. The laws that stood prior to COVID continues. So you can get an abortion should you be within the particular trimester or particular month which is allowed by law. And you can, to file, you will need medical guidance. You might need some authorization from a government hospital, and you might have to follow all the procedures that you had to prior to COVID, and and you are allowed to get aborted. So there is no specific change to law or procedure because of COVID. Whatever the previous guidelines were are applicable now as well. And yeah.
Okay. So the next question is, any legal protection for tenants who are under financial duress to negotiate rent and deposit?
Yeah, this I believe it must be a question that's largely asked. I'm sure there must be an economic impact on many of you during the COVID times, and especially for commercial operators or commercial firms who have large rents to pay. So there's nothing under law. The law doesn't provide for any exemptions. The law says that if you and I, or if the tenant and the landlord were to enter into an agreement, whatever the agreement says, the such amount needs to be paid. But there have been some instances in certain states where some relief has been given, but relief to rent has not been given, because the term rent is, of course, is a private transaction between the landlord and the tenant, and the state has not intervened many times. Each state has their own tenancy laws, but it's not stood the test of time, so it's not really applicable in many instances, current forms of tenancy. But the state has not made any particular concessions for dealing with the tenant and landlord relationship. But however, having said that, the government in many places, many states, you might want to check up for your particular state, has waived property tax, has waived water bills, has waived electricity charges for commercial operators, noticing the impact the pandemic has had on their revenues. So you might want to check if your state has waived certain of these municipal taxes or municipal charges, which you would have otherwise paid if you were pre-COVID for running your businesses.
So the next question is also related to this. Is there any government rule on amount of deposit anyone can charge against rented properties, like 2x, 10x? Like if I'm right, yeah. So rule just like there is a limit for a deposit.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. Are you saying is there a limit in terms of deposit for what?
Rented properties.
Yes, I mean, see, usually, once again, I'm sure for many of you who've stayed in more cities than one, you would have realized that each city, each state has a different deposit process. Some might say 3 months, some might say 4 months, some might say 6 months. So there are various combinations. The very various factors affected. If you want to register your particular tenancy agreement, or you don't want to register your tenancy agreement, so there are several factors that affect it. So I can't give you one answer which says whether whether each state has a different procedure. But since each state has a different procedure, but having said that, there is nothing that the pandemic has has done or the government has done due to the pandemic reduce the deposit charges. So it's the market has to run its course, because there's less demand. You might see landlords charging lesser. So there is nothing specific that's happened during these times.
Thank you. Then there is again a question. There is a rise in divorce cases owing to nuclear couples burdened with household chores and staying with in-laws. So is there any legal remedy to provide counsel in such cases?
Okay, are there any legal remedies to provide health insurance, right? Is that your question?
No, legal remedies to provide counseling in the case where the couple is on the point of getting a divorce because of the
Correct.
closeness in the lockdown for household chores, living with in-laws, and these kind of things.
This also thanks to I've been able to answer this question. There is access to legal help is available. So we have legal aid. Each state has the legal aid agency where couple or any person, the husband or the wife, can get access to lawyers free of cost for such purposes, and then file a divorce or get access to uh, good lawyers to facilitate separation. But specifically during COVID time, there has been an increase in the access to lawyers. So access to legal help should not be very difficult. So if a couple wants to end their marriage or wants to seek divorce, access to free legal aid is available, and it's a very simple internet searches should be able to get you to it. Each state they've advertised widely for the helpline numbers to get access to various legal assistance. So should be possible. But however, if you need counseling, if that was your question, you need counseling, if you need help, psychological help. For the way the divorce proceedings work in India is, prior to divorce, there is of course a mandatory counseling or mediation that a couple is expected to attend. So that might range from 3 to 6 months. So during these times, there is of course a state inducted mandatory counseling that couples go. So they will be asked to once again check if they can work things out, or if they can stay together, or see if there are some differences that they can settle, or if they can reconcile. So that counseling is already available as part of the legal process. But over and above that, if there are any separate couple counseling that the law or the governments have not made any provisions for, you might have to sort of get access to those at your own individual expenses.
Thank you. So the next question is there any legal support for next of kin in the case of demise due to COVID in the private sector?
Next of kin, no. I mean, on this subject, once again, next of kin could qualify as, this is a broad definition. So it could be, for instance, in a large family, if the eldermost has died, then it could be the children who could be maybe out of a certain elder age also. So if it's a young couple and if both of them have died, then it could be a children. So the next of kin varies from situation to situation. If it's a child, like I mentioned, the government has announced several schemes. But if it's somebody much older, there is not any specific scheme or process that exists. But however, the regular laws will follow. if the eldermost has died, or if someone has died and is not died without a will, as we might call it in legal language, they've died intestate, that is, they've died without leaving a will, then we have laws to allow who will take over the property, what sort of arrangement will there be there, how will the finances work between the various children. So there are laws to support it. But specifically for COVID, there is nothing that's been done.
So the next question is, I think, very important, especially for doctors in hospitals. What kind of legal protection do doctors and hospitals have in case of violence against them?
Okay. So, for instance, this once again qualifies as differs from state to state. So each state has a law called the Epidemics Diseases Act, or rather an act which was specifically brought about by the then sort of Britishers to deal with epidemics or pandemics or disease of large public health concerns. So there is widespread power given to the state government to punish those who disrupt their practice, their efforts of solving any public health concern. So since the state can solve any public health concerns through the doctors are essential for solving the pandemic like the COVID, the state governments have created several mechanisms to deal with it. For instance, there is a specific law that has been drafted and a specific provision that exists for medical professions, for frontline workers, or any you don't have to be a doctor, but if you are in the healthcare business and if you are serving the pandemic as a frontline member, and if some violence is committed against you, those who commit such violence can be specifically convicted or sent to imprisonment for such an action. So the government has acted on this, and there is also a fine that can be imposed, and also various sort of individual support in terms of compensation, in terms of medical aid, has been given for those who face such problems.
So regarding this only, the next question is like, if a patient feels that the doctor has not performed up to their performance and they think that it is due to their negligence that their loved one has died, is there any legal way to do that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't follow your question. Could you repeat it?
As a patient and as a next of person, I lost someone to COVID, and I thought that this could have been done if the doctor was not negligent.
Okay.
So is there any legal procedure
Yes,
I can do?
Yeah. So I believe this must have been a common question because of the lack of access to beds during these COVID times. There might be many who might have died, would have otherwise lived if not for medical negligence. So there is, of course. So for instance, we under law we qualify medical services as a service under the Consumer Protection Act. So there is a consumer and service provider relationship between the doctor and the patient. So while it's also a secret relationship, it's also a commercial transaction that we are paying some money to the doctor, and the doctor is expected to give certain services of a certain class and quality. So in the event that that service does not meet the adequate standards, or if there is negligence on part of the doctor, which he should have ideally avoided, that leads to, there is of course a remedy that the patient has against the doctor. So they can file against the doctor, not only against the doctor, but on the hospital as well. So we can file a case. Ideally, you can go approach the consumer forum. And there have been various instances where successful compensations have been issued for people who have died or faced permanent injuries, permanent disabilities because of medical negligence. So medical negligence is definitely recognizable concern under law. And if those doctors who have committed such medical negligence action against them, compensation against them can also be taken. Over above, if it's a medical negligence, you can also file a criminal case against the doctor, what we call as criminal negligence. So, and that is also can parallelly proceed. So patients who have faced injuries because of negligence, not only can they get compensation, but also some criminal action can be taken against the doctor.
Thank you. So the one question is like, how does one deal with property issues during the pandemic?
Yeah, this is also a slightly very generic question. Property issues, once again, there's nothing that the COVID has changed. In the COVID times, there have been no specific changes to property law or how property has to be issued. Whatever the previous the situation was prior to COVID, the current position only has continued. For instance, if somebody is encroached on your property and you want the encroachment to be removed, the same procedure of sending a notice, going to court, getting an order from the court to remove the encroachment, the same procedure has to follow. Similarly, if you have some inheritance issue, that is between your family members, there is a dispute over a particular property. COVID has not, the COVID times has not made any specific changes to how the law will treat. You still have to approach the court. You still have to get an order. You will still have to maybe seek the assistance of some lawyers or some advocates to get through these. But however, if you are looking at some specific concessions or specific relaxations because of COVID, nothing of that sort has been done for property issues.
Like there are some sometimes medical help is designed it for people who are trans or who belong to the LGBT, who are openly belong to the LGBT community. So is there any provision by law to make sure that these people are also get very much accessible healthcare?
I will quickly check on that, because as far as I believe, there is no specific assistance given. Okay, so the government has not made any, or the formally there are no specific schemes for the LGBTQ community with respect to COVID. So if somebody in the LGBTQ community has lost their partner or lost their loved ones, there is no specific provisions that or specific relief that they are entitled to get because they are part of the LGBTQ community. But however, there are several private initiatives by NGOs, by public spirited individuals who want to help a certain class of people who are otherwise also oppressed socially, and then give them certain assistance. But the government has, I believe, there is nothing formally that the government has done on the subject of LGBTQ assistance.
Okay, so just one last question. I think then we are done. How can one report cybercrime and online abuses via legal channels?
Yeah, so for this, I think this is an important question, and I want to also speak about certain ways of to do it. So there is every state government and the police, the local police, there is a cyber cell that exists. Now the cyber cell usually have a distinct number. You can of course call 100 the number and get access to the cyber cell, but the cyber cell also has an individual access number. So I would suggest that you identify these numbers prior, and then once you get it, you can give your details. You can register a complaint. You can register a formal complaint by way of an FIR, and they can take certain actions, identify, investigate cases, and the cyber cells have the capacity. They have some technical capacity to identify and do certain online investigation to find out who has done what. There are portals. For example, in Delhi, from my friends at Nyaya, from which I understand that there is a cybercelldelhi.in, which is an online portal where you can go and register and then click on it, and then you can get access. You can complain, you can report a case, and action can be taken, and you will get an acknowledgement that you have filed a particular complaint. And there is also a pan-India portal called a digitalpolice.gov.in, where you can go file a complaint, report a cybercrime, and then there will be help that will come your way to help for you to assist this. For financial frauds, if you lost money because of cybercrime, or if there is some credit card details that you have lost, or some credit card theft, the RBI also has a specific financial fraud department where you have an online way of reporting some cybercrime. You can call a particular number, report the transaction, and then get your money back, or at least have your bank insure you to certain amount. So there are ways of doing this, and there is structure, there is a well-designed mechanism for this. And whenever you are a victim of cybercrime. Hopefully you're not. If you are, you should utilize some of these portals to register your complaint.
Thank you for this very informative session, Shashank. And it answered a lot of my questions. So once again, I'll tell the audience that there is. I will share my screen and show you that the Nyay initiative which we have taken, which the Shashank has been part of. This is their website, and there is this one particular section which you can. It's multilingual. You can just chat here and ask your legal questions. So whatever questions the audience has, I please request them to use this platform. It's free of cost. It's multilingual, and it will be and also spread this information around. So thank you, Shashank, for this very informative session.
Thank you.
And now I'll just turn the control to Swati. Hi, Swati.
Hi, Simran. So thank you, Simran. Thank you, Apurva. And very much, we are really grateful to you, Shashank, that you came today and gave so many insights on different queries, which are commonly being asked by people these days about, domestic violence or child adoption, because so many children are getting orphaned, or whether it is about cybercrime. I think we have got a better understanding about the basic questions which were not even solved, right? Which are rotating again and again on different platforms and between our communities as well. So thank you so much. And I would urge all the audience who have asked different kind of questions to go to Nyay WhatsApp channel and put in all your queries, and they will definitely respond, because the different states have different laws and different kind of policies. Accordingly, you will get your answers. Thank you so much to Nyay, and thank you so much, Shashank, for coming and hosting this session for us.
Thank you. I'm happy to do. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.